Hi folks, JD here, and welcome to Comics are Awesome, where we bring you everything awesome in comics. And I bring to you today, the future. It would be more impressive if I had an iPad. Back in the day, comics were created to be a disposable medium. At the time, paper prices were low, and comics and pulps and magazines were all cheap ways to entertain. Especially since at the time, comics were intended for kids. A lot of comics at the time were beaten up, torn apart, or simply tossed in the wastebasket after they were finished being read. And thanks to that wasteful attitude, comic collecting was born. Within a few decades, a lot of those kids who grew up reading Superman were now adults and wanted to indulge their nostalgia by getting those issues that they used to own, or never managed to get to read. This created demand, which drove up prices. Eventually, those 10-cent issues were worth thousands of dollars because they were simply not available. All this, in my opinion, helped create the collector's mentality in the hobby. It eventually became less fueled by nostalgia and more completion for completion's sake. When someone buys a comic and never takes it out of the bag and board, or worse, seals it permanently in plastic, thank you very much CGC, I think it takes away the purpose. Both of the comic, which was meant to be read, and collecting, which grew out of people wanting to revisit those old issues. Of course, the collector's market bubble burst in the 90s. Publishers realized that fans and collectors went gonzo over items that they thought might become valuable someday, which meant that they created a lot more of these types of comics. A lot of gimmicky covers, pointless crossovers, and art featuring,
huge tracts of land.
all to get the buyer's attention. Of course this worked, which meant that there were huge quantities of these comics, creating no demand, which meant that most of these wound up in quarter bins, selling for far less than the original cover price. All this being a really long-winded way of saying, collecting has changed. Nowadays, if you wanted to read old early comics, there's a plethora of ways to do it that doesn't involve you selling organs or your firstborn in order to afford it. Now you can find a trade paperback of almost any comic you care to name. Both Marvel and DC offer relatively cheap black and white collections of their older books. Hell, I own 2 legal DVD ROMs that Marvel released about 5 years ago, containing most of the Fantastic Four and Avenger back issues. Which brings me to my next point. Comics in the digital revolution. Let's face it, we live in a digital age, even more so than just a few years ago. You can buy music from iTunes, you can read a book on your Kindle, stream movies from Netflix, and with Hulu you can catch up on your soap opera, manly TV shows. Is it any surprise that eventually comics would catch up? A few years ago, Marvel began offering a subscription that allowed you to access a huge back catalog of their comics. And more recently, Marvel and DC have released apps for their iPhone and iPad that allow you to purchase individual comic copies of a book. They even offer a few select free titles. But there are people who are very resistant to the idea of digital comics. And to a degree, I get that. As a rule of thumb, I would much rather have a comic in my hand that I can pass along to a friend than a digital copy that remains tied to my devices. But there are advantages to both. In my mind, the big advantage for it is space. If you only collect the occasional graphic novel or a single issue of comics, then you fit them in your bookshelf or in a shoebox under your bed. But if you collect it for a while, it adds up. I have 2 long boxes, stacks of unsorted stuff, shelves worth of graphic novels, and that's not even touching on stuff I never moved out of my parents' house. Having all my collection in a laptop or a tablet computer does have some appeal to me. No hunting through boxes for a specific issue, just a few clicks and bam, you got it in your hands. Cost might also play a factor, though right now digital comic pricing hasn't quite settled yet. Right now it saves you about $1 to $2 an issue, which is a saving, but perhaps not enough of one to entice people. In at least one case, Marvel released the Iron Man annual that was actually split into parts that when you purchased all together cost you more than the physical issue. But it's obviously something the companies are trying to gauge right now in order to figure out what people can and will pay. But one of the biggest factors might be the accessibility. While Iron Man and Dark Knight might be huge box office successes when it comes to their film adaptations, they're lucky when they can crack 100,000 issues of their comics. Why? Well, there are a lot of reasons for it, but I think a large part of it is that simply people can't easily access comics anymore. It used to be that drugstores and grocery stores carried them, but now not so much. Bookstores might have a rack hidden someplace, but I've been to several that don't have a single issue sold there. If you want a guaranteed way to get the comics that you are after, you either have to order online and wait for them to come to you, or you have to go to a comic book store. But some places don't have a comic copy store nearby. Some people don't know about them, and some people just don't like them for whatever reason. Having the ability to download anywhere at any time, I think could potentially entice people for whom might never stop into a comic store. And as digital comics evolve, it might help fight piracy. Recently, comic writer Paul Cornell tweeted that apparently legal download of comics averages out to be about 4 times the number of print copies sold. While I don't pretend that the expansion of digital comics will get rid of illegal copies being distributed on the internet, nor can I condone it, I do think at least some of those people might be willing to pay if the legal options were more easily available. With as much of a niche hobby as it is, every sale counts. So all this boils down to choice. Right now, I don't see digital comics as a threat to print comics. Instead, they are an option. A way to introduce a new generation to comics. And while I personally won't run out and buy up stuff for my iPhone, if I can't get something anywhere else, I'd definitely consider it. All I'm saying here is, if you're a hardcore collector, you can still get your books in print. But if you're not, then you should appreciate the fact that digital comics are offering you an option. If I give you a piece of apple pie, you appreciate it. But if I give you the choice between apple pie or cherry cheesecake, then you appreciate it more. So, go out, try a comic. I don't care if it's on your iPhone or if it's in your hands. Just try it. Now, if you excuse me, I gotta go get some dessert.
Code monkey, get up, get coffee. Code monkey, go to job. Code monkey, have boring meeting with boring manager Rob. Rob say code monkey very diligent, but his output stink. His code not functional or elegant. What do code monkey think? Code monkey think maybe manager wanna write goddamn login page himself. Code monkey not say it.
Oh, these reviews are gonna make me fat.